and we're supporting like $1 billion that's going over to Ukraine. Those are neo-fascists. Zelensky sat there and gave a speech to Congress about wanting the no-fly zone. Hey, let's have World War III. Come on, right? And on his T-shirt, you could see an iron cross.
Yes,
well, an iron cross, and most people don't know what that is, but that's a Nazi emblem. They're not even hiding it. Like it's they didn't blur it. It's sitting right there for everyone to see, and like not one Western media outlet commented on it. You saw some people ask, "Hey, what's that symbol?" And I'm like, "That's an iron cross. Like, be scared of that."
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that because let's just go right into the next section, and we'll do Super Raise after, because that's the next section. Like, it's funny you mentioned it because I want to show a video of Pelosi versus Pelosi, of how Pelosi acted with Ukrainian Nazis versus Pelosi talking about the U.S. right. But I actually have a picture that Dan Cohen posted on Twitter of what you just talked about, the Iron Cross. There it is right there. Look what it says. The Iron Cross was a military decoration in the Kingdom of Prussia, and it was later used by the German Empire and Nazi Germany. It doesn't necessarily 100% always mean Nazi, but
No, I mean, I actually have one. I have one that my mother gave me from Malta that her friend had given her, a boyfriend that had given her, who was, international, and they actually fought the Nazis, but he was an Iron Cross from the family. But it is, later on it meant that. Originally from Prussia, it did not. You're right. Mm-hmm. But then in the 30s, it became a symbol of neo-Nazism. And the Azov battalion is a neo-Nazi battalion. Like, there's no question. And they were trying to say that was Russian disinformation, and now they're admitting, okay, yes, there was.
Yeah.
So they're just like chasing their own tail.
So I want you to see this video because I clipped this from RT, because I mean, you can watch RT on Odyssey, you can watch it, on Rumble, and, you can find ways to watch it, but it's unfortunate because now it's banned everywhere. But this is why they banned RT. Take a look at Nancy Pelosi, what she said when she introduced Zelensky versus what she said about white supremacy in North America.
Nancy Pelosi on Wednesday introduced the Ukrainian president's speech to Congress with the Glory to Ukraine salute.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. Slava Ukraina! Slava Ukraina!
The slogans you've just heard are translated as Glory to Ukraine and Glory to the Heroes, key nationalist slogans since the Ukrainian coup of 2014. The roots lie with various Ukrainian nationalist groups in the first half of the 20th century, most notably an organisation headed by Stepan Bandera, a notorious Nazi collaborator. But that doesn't seem to bother Nancy Pelosi, despite previously declaring that the very thing Bandera championed was America's biggest terrorism concern.
White supremacy is the biggest bucket of concern when it comes to domestic terrorism. Xenophobia, white supremacy, and availability of guns are an explosive combination that we must disconnect. We're working now on a resolution. We'll see when we bring it to the floor that will, again, speak out against anti-Semitism, anti-Islamophobia, anti-white supremacy in all the forms that it takes, that our country has no place for this.
Okay. Well, Tara, I want to hear your thoughts on her hypocrisy, right? Like, what the hell?
It's the United States of hypocrisy. I mean, like, it's like listening to them talk about Me Too, right? Like yesterday they were doing the Violence Against Women Act. Meanwhile, I exist. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're saying, she in 2014, John, Julian Assange bravely with WikiLeaks exposed the crimes that happened and how America backed the coup that was done by neo-Nazis. And there were members of the Ukrainian government held at gunpoint, putting in provisions about, not allowing Russian nationals to speak Russia and other things, and it was we backed that coup. And so I don't understand how America can get behind this. You had 14,000 Russian nationals that died in the Donbass region in 8 years. That whole time, Russia was trying to do diplomatic inroads with Ukraine, but it became impossible, as they stated, because Ukraine was being used as, like a Western puppet. And it is. I mean, there's no question. We kind of admit it, right? So now the red line became Ukraine joining NATO. So now the last 48 hours, it is clear that Ukraine will not join NATO.
Yeah.
Not clear about the EU, but clear that can be given in writing. And so it's weird. There's two different narratives happening. So you heard Nancy Pelosi yesterday going on about wanting MiGs and so on, and no fly zone. I mean, she was all like, let's have World War III. But meanwhile, you had Ukrainians leadership meeting with Russian leadership, maybe trying to find neutrality and peace. But yeah. America hasn't made enough money yet. So
right. And that's called narrative management. And they have to, like, if you noticed how quickly we went from the pandemic, and then like they weren't even pushing any sort of, oh, you're having misinformation about COVID. Then it was like misinformation about Russia. It's like, what's the next thing? What is the next thing they're going to manipulate? It's not saying that the conflicts aren't real. It's saying that the conflicts are manipulated. The issues are being exploited for a certain narrative. And I wanted to go back to what her issue was, because that's my issue with a lot of the left here in the United States, is that I don't know what's happened, but a lot of people are on the left are supporting neo-Nazis. Essentially, they're supporting the State Department talking points,
anti-war people. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, when it comes to this, exactly like her, they talk about white supremacy in the United States, which is, I mean, hello, it's the United States, of course. Like this country's foundation, okay, was the foundation on slavery and white supremacy. We know this, okay. But when you have a bunch of this narrative that they took, right, where January 6th was once again exploited to say that, there was these insurrectionists that were going to take over the government, and that was never going to happen. But it was just this thing that was exploited to label everybody as domestic violent extremists and have everybody, especially people that are actually like anti-imperialists, be in danger now of anything. And they use those people that were out there protesting, right? And they gaslit them. And then they were like, oh, so now any of you that's, whether you're an environmentalist, whether you're a vegan, whatever it is that you are, you could now be called a domestic violent extremist. And what happens is we've begun losing our civil rights and our civil liberties every single day. And meanwhile, the CIA was training neo-Nazis and members of the Azov battalion. In fact, some of these people, as one of my friends, Alex Rubinstein, pointed out, were the same type of ideology that were there in Charlottesville back in 2016 or 17 when they killed Heather Heyer. And that whole situation is just hilarious because we arm and train these fascists. And we did that too in the Middle East. We did it in West Asia. The United States has supported extremists in order to get what they need. And it's nothing new.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's just out in the open. But what's really, the gaslighting part is how they say that the neo-Nazis don't really exist in Ukraine. Yeah. And someone had posted, one of the, Democratic cult trolls, so to speak, posted that, well, there's no neo-Nazis, that's blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, actually, they were 8% to 14% of the Ukrainian government, and they're armed. There is a problem with it. That's a documented historical fact. But what's happening is they're weaponizing big tech. They even weaponize big tech to change Wikipedia about it. And it's really how we're having, like you were saying earlier about controlling narratives, how literally it's being siphoned into one Western empire lens so that we can't see anything beyond that lens. And it gets censored. And that is frightening. That is, you know, so how to push back on it is doing what you're doing, is trying to present, you know, facts. And she actually, you know, that was a good clip, the series of clips she showed, because it shows the evolution of Nancy Pelosi, you know, basically trading her morals about white supremacy for money she's going to make off defense contracts that are killing Ukrainian people and Russian people in our proxy war.
And let me go ahead and ask you a question. We're going to play this clip, and I have a question for you after we play the clip. Do you believe that these people have any sort of real say? Because at this point, I don't think, you know, Biden's running this country. I think the State Department is. So let's hear what she says, because I mean, this is ridiculous right now. We are the laughing stock of the world.
Another way we can get that done, and that's what people are looking into. What you saw yesterday was history. Later at the lunch, just maybe you might want to watch, I'm going to be reading a poem written by Bono about Ukraine, which you might find interesting.
Because, Tara, it just seems to me like their job is to just be PR, right? PR for the empire at this point. They don't really do anything.
Yeah, and it's like the, you know, it's like the media. When you watch any of the, you know, media during Sunday, you know, like MSNBC or CNN, all the people they have on there are former, you know, CNN analysts and, you know, or excuse me, former CIA analysts and Defense Department, and they're all, but there's no balance. There's no, you don't hear from, you know, RT, you don't hear from Russians, you don't hear from different, you don't hear a different lens. What's interesting too is that with that narrowing, I think they're trying so desperately to stay relevant, but at some point it's going to implode onto itself, because people are already not trusting the media. They're not believing it. And you saw that, you know, collectively during the last election cycle. And here we are coming up in the fall election cycle. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, the slaughter that happens to Democrats, because I don't think they're going to hold on to the House or the Senate, personally.
Yeah, they're not. But I think
Nancy Pelosi, you know, you have to film her before noon, obviously, because after noon, she obviously hasn't poured out her vodka, only down her throat. So,
yeah,
with a little Xanax mixed in, who knows? Just my opinion.
Let's go ahead and play the next video, and we'll discuss it. And because Tara, this is something really important. And when we were talking about the Nazi issue, there's also a lot of hatred towards Russians, and this is something that people don't really talk about. Like, you know, we talk about xenophobia, you talk about anti-China stuff and the anti-immigrant stuff. Well, there's like a huge hatred for Russians that's been cultivated in this country for a long time. And now it's just coming to fruition.
Yeah.
Я знаю, що як журналіст я маю бути об'єктивним, маю бути виваженим для того, щоб повідомляти вам інформацію з холодним серцем, але направду триматися зараз дуже важко, особливо в такий час, і якраз уже нас на Росії називають нацистами, фашистами і так далі. Я дозволю собі зацитувати слова Адольфа Ейхмана, який сказав, що для того, щоб знищити націю, потрібно нищити в першу чергу дітей. Тому що, вбиваючи їхніх батьків, діти виростуть і обов'язково помстяться. Вбиваючи дітей, вони ніколи не виростуть, і нація зникне. Як Збройні сили України не можуть нищити російських дітей, тому що це заборонено правилами війни, і це заборонено різними конвенціями, в тому числі Женевськими. Але я не зі Збройних сил України. І коли мені випаде нагода розправитися з росіянами, я обов'язково це зроблю. Я дотримаюсь, раз ви вже називаєте нацистами, дотримуюсь доктрини Адольфа Ейхмана і зроблю все, що від мене залежить, для того, щоб ні ви, ні ваші діти ніколи не жили на цій землі. Для того, щоб ви відчули, як воно, коли вмирають ні в чому не винні цивільні люди, для того, щоб ви відчули весь біль і страждання, коли ви говорите, а ми не починали війни, це все Путін, ми не хотіли цієї війни. Ви теж її не хотіли, але тепер ви мусите розуміти, що тут йдеться про перемогу українського народу, а не мир. Нам потрібна перемога. І якщо для цього доведеться вирізати всі ваші сім'ї, я буду одним із перших, хто це зробить. Слава нації! І сподіваємось, що такої нації, як Росія і росіяни, ніколи більше не залишаться на цій землі. Тому що це просто виродки, які засмічують цю землю. І якщо в українців є можливість, що вони зараз, в принципі, роблять, трощити, різати, вбивати, душити москальноту, я сподіваюся, що кожен внесе свій вклад і замочить хоча б одного москаля.
Okay. So imagine if that were switched to any other ethnic group. How outraged would the vast majority of liberals act, right? They, oh my God, I'm so outraged that this person is so racist. Example, if Trump said those words, imagine, because liberals, again, this is what I was afraid of with a Biden presidency, that they would go back to brunch, and they did. And because the media always covers Biden favorably, they never make fun of him. And so when this whole thing is happening, we are seeing history not necessarily repeat itself, but sort of poetically rhyme with how, ironically, this sort of, anti-Semitism started way back when, nearly 100 years ago. And that led to World War II, and it led to, the murder of 6 million plus Jewish people. Well, that's sort of ideal that leads to the destruction of people. And that's what's been happening. Those are the kind of people that have taken over the Donetsk and Luhansk region. And this is why they wanted to be independent of Ukraine. Well, more objectively, they took over the Ukrainian government, and they've said it as much. They've said, they embrace who they are. They don't hold back. They say, oh, we're only 10% or so of the government, but we're the most powerful. We're highly influential. So, it's disgusting hearing that, but it's also like, hello, this is what the United States has been backing for a long time.
Exactly. And, in that clip, you heard him say it, he quoted Eichmann. That's not more neo-Nazi than that, quoting directly, talking about killing Russian children. I mean, that's deplorable. And Russophobia has been going on for 70 years. And it's just really hit this high pitch. I mean, like, just because I've worked at RT and, my association itself, I get death threats, and I get called, when I came out, I got called a Russian whore that made all my money on my back, and all these other names. And the hatred is so strong. And like, I have people in my DM say unbelievable things to me. And yet liberals just think it's no big deal. They cheer it on. They do it themselves. It's amazingly ugly. And I'm frankly, we're going to come around to peace eventually, hopefully, if we don't get to World War III, which who knows? I don't know what, the future, but I'm hoping not. But, this is not going to be forgotten, this hatred and this vitriol. And in the Donbass region, you're right. They were talking about ethnic cleansing. And that, 14,000 people is a significant amount, and many of those were children. Yep. And, it's mind-boggling to me that the people that call themselves neoliberals can sit there and talk about, being anti-racist or whatever, and then engage in xenophobia and bigotry and Russophobia like this, and hatred of someone just because of where they're born. And to ban products, to ban Russian cats from the International Cat Show, to ban Russian athletes. A Russian artist recently, he was going to play the piano classically in some competition. They banned the Russian competitors from playing. I mean, it's ridiculous. And yeah. This point of history is going to be looked at with such scorn, I really believe.
Yeah, I believe too. And it's so symbolic, right? How American is that? The same way they treat everything. It's just symbolic virtue signaling. The same way they treat, women's rights, the same way they treat democracy, the same way they treat any sort of like reformist, like we're here for the workers, it's bullshit. It's all symbolics. It's not rooted in economics. And that's the thing. It's not rooted in the needs of people. And that's part of the whole problem.